So recently I came across a wonderful video by an excellent YouTuber by the name of Jay Cameron. He also sells tours throughout many parts of Africa, in particular West Africa, and he has this wonderful video called My Hardest Lessons Learned Doing Business in Africa. And I know so many people from the diaspora, or maybe you went to the diaspora from Ghana or Nigeria and you kind of lost touch and you'd like to come back to the continent and do some business. I want to see if this man is telling the truth about doing business in Africa. I want to go ahead and react to it, and let's find out.
When you talk about traveling and doing business abroad, one of the biggest mistakes that I watch people make is they go in green. They go in with the expectation, the anticipation of these different cultures respecting their Americanness or their UK-ness or their Canadian-ness. And a lot of people get in for a rude awakening because the cultures around the world are very, very different. So when I decided I was going to go into business and into do business in foreign countries, I didn't have any training. I didn't go to school to do business in another country. And honestly, I don't even think there's a school that can train you on this, thoroughly, because there's always some sort of nuance or some sort of new thing that comes about that you're shocked with. You're like, oh, good God Almighty. As a matter of fact, I was having a conversation with Governor Donald Duke in Nigeria, and he told me, he was, we were just chopping it up, and he was putting me on game, and he said, listen, he said, when you come over here, do business in Lagos for the shock of it all, for the shock. And he said shock. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I'll never forget when he said it, because it was like, whoa, he really placed an emphasis on it, because I guess in reality, for his level of success in Nigeria, he's had to deal with a lot of foolishness. So anyway, so with that, though,
let me talk about the foolishness. That is one thing. Maybe here it's not foolish, and I've never been to his parts of Africa, but yes, there is things that's going to happen here that for you it doesn't make sense, and it is foolish, right? So there's a lot of that in the business community here.
So with that, though, even with all of that said, it has not been a deterrent for me. And the reason why it has not been a deterrent for me is because I see the Chinese all throughout Africa. I see the Lebanese all throughout Africa. I see the Indians all throughout Africa. I see Europeans all throughout Africa. But on many levels, I don't see people who, like me, who are part of the American African diaspora on the continent of Africa doing business. Although we do have people doing business, like Judah over Jerk Soul and so many other people who are doing business on the continent. For a lot of people, they become afraid or they have their first hiccup and they run back to the U.S. or whatever.
So let me talk about that. As much as there's going to be foolishness and all that stuff, right? The opportunity is definitely here. I know I complain a lot about the foolishness you will go through. I do work every day of the month here. But at the same time, Indians, Chinese, and all these other people are here, which means that, like I said, if there's a hiccup, stick with it, right? I've been here for 5 years off and on, 6 years off and on. So stick with it.
I've seen many scenarios where if people are not prepared for certain things, then that rude awakening comes. And when the rude awakening comes, now they're like, oh, I got to get out of here. I got to go or whatever. Now, let me walk it down to you, because I know that's what you're watching and that's what you want to be able to see. First thing is this: you need to have a thick skin. If you don't have a thick skin, then this might not be the thing for you.
Definitely have a thick skin. And like I said, if you're too nice, sometimes you too giving. Shout out to the brother Carlos who's talking about that yesterday in my office. You're gonna get ran over. You're gonna develop a thick skin if you're gonna stay here. You're gonna develop it. You're gonna be you got to have a thick skin to be here. That's definitely true.
You have to have a level of patience. You have to have a level of endurance. You have to have a level of street smarts. There are just certain things that, you've been trained for. Many of us have been trained for, I should say, in America. It's just that we have to bring that same vibe and that same drive wherever we do international business, whether it's Africa, South America, Asia, Europe, wherever. You have to understand that the systems are just different from how things operate in America. And you also want to be prepared to invest on the front end. So before I do one of my tours, and just for those who don't know, I do tours to different parts of Africa and the African diaspora. What I do, I go and I invest in the tour before I even do the first tour. So I might do.
So this is something that a lot of people don't want to talk about, but I spent thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars just to fail, just to see how it will work. Lost money just to figure out a system for myself. That is something that you're going to do. You're going to spend a lot of money failing, right? You have a hypothesis, you're spending some money failing. It's probably the quickest way to learn, the best way to learn, and the most efficient way to learn. So what he's going to talk about now is very important.
Be $10, $15, maybe $20,000 into a tour before I bring the first person.
Right.
Because I want to make sure that everything has been walked through. We have the relationships established. I've already watched the people mess up on me and give them the opportunity to correct it, or I've pivoted and gone somewhere else before I bring.
This is perfect. He's saying, listen, he's doing a tour. He wants to go on a tour himself. And remember, you're coming from the States where you collaborate with somebody. Oh, that's a business. No, they're doing. No. You don't know the quality of what the person that you're vending is doing. Let me talk about this. King Ghana Studios, we create the Repat podcast here. We have the Pan-African Dating Show. Now, the reason I will give myself a round of applause, clap in the background, right? The reason why our staff is so good is because I've been here working for 5 or 6 years. We have a lot of skill in the business, a lot of money in this. So we can hit this international standard on the podcast and things like that. However, if I was outsourcing to another company to do my podcast, it wouldn't look as good as this. So when you have people that you're working for and they work for you, you can raise the standard to whatever you want it to be if they want to work there. However, if you are collaborating with another vendor, a supplier, you need to test that person out before you throw an event, before you have a tour, before you have something, because God forbid that person is not at your level that you needed to be, and you have people that's coming, especially from the international community, and that vendor is terrible. It looks very, very bad. So you need to make sure that if you're dealing with people like vendors, tourism people who are dealing in transport, you don't know how good they work. You need to know how good they work. Let them test on you before you ruin your name, before other people get impacted by your service.
The first person. And so that's one of the things I did before I did my first tour to Ghana, or second tour to Ghana, I should say, because I'll tell you a little bit about the first tour in a second. But second tour to Ghana, one of the things I did was I had to vet the transportation companies. And so I reached out to some of the staff members, and I said, hey, listen, I said, I want to do the tour with the transportation company before I take anyone on the tour. I want to see how they operate. I want to see if they show up on time. I want to see what the condition of the vehicles are. And so we had to go through a couple of companies because, one company we were working with started off great, but then the quality of the vehicle started to go down.
This is very important. I like the fact that, like I said, I know somebody here right now, they're getting into farming, African-American couple, and I'll bring them on the podcast. I don't want to just shout them out right now. I'll wait until we actually have them on the podcast so they can, if they want me to talk about what they're doing. And they're testing out these different companies for their sausage product, and they're finding out that a lot of these people, these butcheries are not good. So what you also see is people start off doing very well, and then they get comfortable, and then their quality stops. Now, again, if that person works for you, they can't do that, or they risk being fired. But when you are collaborating with people, that's where it is, because now you're like an equal, right? I'm collaborating with you. You're a partner in what I'm doing. So now they feel like they can do other stuff that will damage the business. So you have to understand that is very important.
As he became more comfortable with us and the rates started to change. Oh, the rate's different today. This is, so you go.
That happens all the time. Always changing prices. I've had to fire people for that. Okay. Like, they'll supposed to do something and then they'll change the price or stop working with people for that. It's something that happens a lot here. Anybody been here? I mean, I'm pretty sure it happens other places too around the world, but I could just tell you about here. Rates always change, And again, they're getting greedy. They don't understand the repeat business and doing a good job. Some people think with a dusty mind.
Go through those things, but guess what? If I had tried to do that from the U.S., now I'm all the way out there. Now they can play all kinds of games, and that's the thing that you got to realize is that people will play a passive aggressive game if they know that you're not there in their face, or they know that you don't have other options. Now the price doubles. All of a sudden, now it went from 500 CDs to 1,000 CDs overnight just because they felt as though they wanted to change the price. Now, the average entrepreneur who's not prepared for that gets in their feelings, and you're gonna get in your feelings. But it's like, okay, well, if that's the game you want to play, all right, you got me right here, right now. But no, next time you're gonna lose, because a lot of times
that's very important. So, like I said, I was away for about almost a year in 2021. Business still ran fine, but I did notice that when I came back, the business did pick up. So you got to understand, when you're away, people already think you're stupid for the most part. You're American, you're stupid, all right? That's gonna be probably, or you're naive. So now, when you are here, you need to show people that yes, I have options. I'm here. You can't cheat me. If you do cheat me, I'm getting rid of you. I'm going to somebody else until we get this right. And again, there is a level of being here on the ground. I've been here this time like 16 months because I've needed to be here for 16 months to really put my spin on the business. So, like I said, if you can't do that, start off very small, but you're gonna need to be here for the business to get where it needs to be.
Sometimes what ends up happening, people in business, they play for survival. In the international settings, they play for survival for that day. They're not thinking about the long money. They're looking at, how can I make it today?
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. I'm not concerned about tomorrow and the business relationship and all of that. I'm just trying to survive for today. And that goes back to a lot of the culture and how the culture has been conditioned. And if the culture is thinking like that and operating like that, then, but if you don't know that, you're going and thinking, hey, if we make a contract, we make an agreement, it's going to stick. If these people recognize that you are green like that or you don't have options, then they're going to stick it to you. And so, but you got to be prepared. Now, circle back to my first.
So let me talk about the culture of doing business of, let me get you today. And some people, there was a particular guy that I had a real big issue with transport a few years ago. Like when I brought wood in my hair. And I saw the guy like yesterday, the day before. The guy had enough nerve to be like, oh, I want to do business with you again. And like I stopped working with the guy. But that's just what they think. They think that some people think like, I'm trying to get you over on you today. And it could be even people that were in the diaspora. I'll say this. A lot of people that are doing well in Uganda or Ghana or Nigeria, they've lived and worked in London, they lived and worked in the States, and they come back here and they have that same mentality that you would see just on the street. They're trying to get you like anybody else, right? From what I saw, a lot of people are. I'm not saying everybody, but a lot of people are trying to get you and use you. And there's other people from the diaspora too. It ain't just Africans, the African Americans also. So you got to understand this is what the game is. And again, they have a lot of people have that quick mentality. Let me use you today. Then have the nerve to smile in your face tomorrow like ain't nothing wrong and you should be okay with it. So what he's saying is the truth.
But in my in a second, someone turned me on to, when I was in Tanzania, I was turned on to one of the investors who does one of the tent camps out there, and he's an Indian guy, and we had a long conversation. He said, Jay, he said it's tough. He said it's tough. He said, but if you can hang in there long enough, he said there's a lot of money in tourism on the continent of Africa. So I'm taking it from someone who's, he's paid his dues, he's paying his dues, but also I'm looking at it from a cultural standpoint. And he's telling me, this is an Indian guy, and Indians, especially in East Africa, find a level of success. So I'm listening to him. I'm saying, okay, well, hey, let me put me on game. He considered me to want to be. He was pitching me to be an investor. So he said, well, here's the deal. This is what we're doing and what we want to do, and this is what I went through to get there. And so I listen, I take all these little nuggets along the way. I have no discrimination. I listen to what people have to say because I'm playing to win. So when you play to win, you don't get in your feelings, man, them Indians over here taking over everything. Okay, I peeped that. Okay, well, if that's the case, what am I going to do about it? Well, I'm going to get in the game too.
Right.
And I'm going to be a part of this whole thing too.
Right.
And so I see what's going on. Let me get in and then create opportunities for other people like me and others on the continent of Africa. And that's how what I can do in order to offset some of the takeover by Asia when it comes to the continent of Africa. When circling back to the first tour, one of the mistakes I made on my very first tour was I just kind of subcontracted it, if you will. You say, okay, let me go subcontract it to this particular company, and this is how we're going to do it. Everything went well. The tour was actually a great tour. But it didn't have my vibe. It didn't have what I have on the tours now, because
So this is what we're going to talk about. I was approached to start another business similar in, I would say, tourism and things like that. And I would say the person that was interested in starting it, I've been approached a few times, right? And then, the person was just like, okay, we can just invest and own the company, and then others can run the business. This has been something that's offered to me for many things, from a farm, poultry, to tourism, to anything like that. I will tell you that the business is not going to work the way you want it to. I know that's a common thing in Africa. Invest in a business and let others run it. I'm going to tell you what I honestly feel they're going to do. They're going to run it into the ground. And so it's not going to be what you like. The King Ghana YouTube channel, or what we have right now with the Pan-African Dating Show, you guys see that. And just the rebirth of this channel and people coming into the country we've been hosting. It would not have happened. I'm not bragging on myself or anything like that, but if I was not here, we would not have, I believe, the influx and a lot of that work and a lot of that, some of that stuff going on. Don't get me wrong, I have a lot of help, but again, you need to be here. You need to put your spin on it, and if you allow others to do it, it's going to be at that same standard that maybe you're trying to get away from. You won't be able to compete in the market. You need to be able to put your spin on your product or your service to make it like yours.
Thinking with the Western mind, with the American mind, let me get in, contract the company, and then I'll just move on to the next thing, and then blah, blah, blah. Now, when you're thinking about business, you want to scale, you want to go up, and you want to do all those different things. But if you don't have the right company representing your brand, then what ends up happening is that impacts you, and it impacts your long-term experience. So when I recognize, I said, if I don't put my brand on this, and if this is something I begin to establish along the way, then it leaves the door open for more exploitation of me. So what I decided to do at that point is I said, now I'm going to create the maximum impact brand, our experience, curate it, write it, make sure that it's all in place, everything that we need. Let's make sure that all of this stuff is in place.
Perfect. Let me just say this. He makes a good point that I leave myself out to be exploited. But not only that, you just leave yourself to not only be exploited, but to you can't differentiate yourself. So you want to make yourself stand out in the market. So this is what he's saying, like, I need to be involved. I need to create what the brand is, especially even for the people that you're going to be hiring, right? When you hire somebody, you have to understand that most people that I've hired have been working gigs. That means they don't have consistent work. They've worked here and there. You know what I mean? A few days here, a few days there. But they've never had a job where they get up in the morning, they got to be in the office at 8 o'clock to 7 o'clock, or working weekends, or working nights, or we have a night shift. So they don't have that culture. So if you don't manage that, because people are going to come in late, you're going to have people that turning work in on time, making excuses, saying things like that, calling in, it's raining, they don't come to work. All of those things you need to mitigate, and your culture of how the workflow should go every day in the business has to be there. And that level of excellence and that level of incentivizing needs to be there. And if you're not there to manage that, you don't know what's going to go on in the business. And so you need to be able to spend time with your employees if you can, one-on-one with your employees, connect with them, your vendors, and you need to be able to be in the game also. So what he's saying is absolutely correct.
Place, because that's how you ensure that the quality of what you're bringing is intact. And so it's a system that I have in place in every location that we go to. Yeah. But if I didn't come and put my feet on the ground and spend time here, and I mean, I'm just saying, there's different places all throughout the continent. If I don't do that and I try to be cheap with it, or I try to be lazy with it, then I don't get to the level of what we've been able to get to in such a short period of time.
Yes.
Now, here's some other things. I talked about being prepared to invest on the front end. If you're not willing to go through and spend time on the ground with whatever you do in a restaurant or whatever, if you're not willing to go in and put that money in on the front end, you're not going to make it on the back end, because you're going to spend. The learning curve is going to happen with your clients, and it doesn't necessarily have to happen like that.
So let me just stop there. Firstly, he says, if I don't have the value, okay, I can't grow this fast in a short period of time. I've been here for 5 years, 5 to 6 years off and on. All right. And like I said, we couldn't even edit one video in Uganda in 2020. And now we can put up our podcast on 4K. If we need to, we can do one every single day in this country, right? And that just comes to the whole point of reinvesting. He talks about investing on the front end. Here's something that a lot of people got to understand. You got to spend the money. Some of that money you're going to spend to fail, right? That's just something to allocate. Some of that money, you're going to lose it and fail it. Somebody going to scam you, somebody going to rip you off or whatever. But the quality, and for those of you who've never run a business before or don't know what that's like, you need to know how your business is going to run every day. How do your employees interact with customers? And like he said at the end part, if you don't get it right, your customers are going to experience that your learning curve, and it don't have to be that way. The last thing you want is your learning curve coming from your customers. You don't want that. Just like if we have a bad sound, okay, and the sound is terrible on the podcast or just on this audio right now, because if I don't invest in the equipment, right here I have a Rodecaster, we have a larger mixer board, we have pretty great editing PCs. I don't want to see the comments saying, hey, your sound is terrible. No, as an owner in a business like this, I need to be able to put that money up so that you have a good listening experience. I'm just giving an example. So you need to be able to do that, right? But what I will tell you is this. As much as you hear me complaining about what's going on in Uganda every day, I love it here. It has afforded me a great lifestyle. I want everybody to experience this for themselves. It's a rough road ahead. And the whole African diaspora, African Americans or Black Africans or Africans or Caribbeans, it takes time. It takes a lot of patience, but you're going to get there. Just keep believing in what Africa has to offer you, what you have to offer it. And I'm telling you, you'll find talented people along the way that will help you. I'm here to tell you one last thing. The most people are the people that can help you the most. You have not met them yet. I'm going to say it again. The people that will help you the most, you have not met them yet. And you'd be surprised they're right here in the continent of Africa. I've met them here in Uganda, but you got to swing the bat. You got to keep putting yourself out there. You got to keep having a positive attitude. There are days I don't have a positive attitude, but hey, we're going to keep pushing on anyway, because hey, it's my right to be here. This is my own mother continent. It is your mother continent, and we're here to try to help develop it as it is developing us. And let us enjoy the fruits of our labor and try to develop our people. From the Ugandan community, from the African American community, from the Caribbean community, Africa is an opportunity, but it's going to take a lot of work, and have that tough skin. Trying to take it so personal. I take it personal in the comments. I take it but don't take it that personal, right? It's something that we're all going through. Even Ugandans are going through it. The diaspora and Ugandans are going through it. Everybody's going through it. The local African here is going through it. Everybody's suffering, okay? So we're all coming together, learning. I want to give a shout out to Brother Jay Cameron. Please go check out that video. That brother is a very talented. I would love to. If he ever comes to Tanzania, maybe I could fly him here to Uganda to be on the podcast. I would love to have him. And just shout out to the brother for that great informative video. So guys, it's your boy O'Shea Duke Jackson here on King Ghana. Subscribe, hit the bell.